Myrtis Bedolla. So we will begin. We have 4 categories. The first category is about you and your curatorial practice. So my first question to you is, tell us about your background and what led you to become a gallerist.
Thank you, Chanel. Thank you for providing me with this opportunity. I'm sincerely grateful for this, providing this platform for the artists and their voices, and I'm also grateful to your staff because this was a labor of love. A lot of work, dedication, and time has gone into making this exhibition a success. So I thank you for that, and I know she will too. I'm sorry. Thank you. That's my mighty husband always watching out for me. Get those things out of your ear. So before I begin, I also want to say happy birthday to my oldest son, Oscar. Happy birthday, Nicole. So what led me to begin my curatorial path? I think there are 2 things that have been instrumental in laying the foundation for where I am today. One, my father was an art collector, so I was surrounded by original works of art as a child, and I believe that that has really helped to shape my worldview, my existence, and understanding the importance of aesthetically what we live with, what kind of environments that we surround, visually what we surround ourselves with. And then secondly, I love to read, and that was instilled in me through my grandfather, who I spent the summers with, my grandparents, because both of my parents worked. And each night, he was a business owner. He had a cleaning business. He worked as a bookkeeper. Well, he prepared the books for a theater, which was one of his clients for his janitorial service. But because of when he was born and where he was born, his education, I think he may have had a 7th or 8th grade education, but mathematically he was a genius. And so when they discovered his abilities, they asked him to keep the books. So I remember these huge ledgers, just paper, and his sitting there and, doing their accounting for them, their bookkeeping for them. And so, and he had many clients that during the summer, I would go from one client business to the next and helped him clean. I probably made more of a mess than anything, but so that was very formative in my understanding business ownership and entrepreneurship. So I knew that I wanted to be a business owner, but didn't know what path that would take me. And then I also want to say that I sit before you as a testament to God can build God can dream a bigger dream for you than you can dream for yourself. Because of my grandfather's mathematical abilities, I began a career educationally, believing that I was going to become a CPA. But that path was pivoted when a dear friend of mine, she and I have worked together on several cultural projects, and I was in corporate doing marketing, business stuff, and realized that through her associates, many of which were artists, she suggested that I use my writing abilities and marketing abilities to help them develop professional portfolios. So that was really my entree into the art world. And so that's what I began doing, but still working my 9-to-5 job. And my friend, being my friend and my sister friend, she calls all her artists and she's friends, and she says, Myrtis is representing artists. I was like, oh no, I'm not. What I'm doing is helping a few write their professional artist statements, biographies, and resumes. And many of those artists were very well educated, but really didn't understand what each one of those documents should entail and how they can be used to move their careers forward. And then the last thing I did that really took that effort to another level was approach a gallery on behalf of an artist, proposed on his behalf that he'd be represented there in an exhibition, and he was accepted. So that, coupled with the writing and the professional portfolio development, that's where Creative Artisans was born in 1989, I believe. And so that business evolved to where we are now with Galerie Myrtis.
That's incredible. I mean, so you have, you really do have all the components of a great gallerist, right? Like, you have that CPA background, you have that entrepreneurial spirit that you had since you were a child. When you were a little kid, you're like, I'm gonna own a business.
Oh yeah, I used to stand outside my grandfather's house, and let me just add one thing, don't lose your thought, because this is also, I think, important in showing you my mindset at a very young age. So I would take a milk carton, cut it in half. My grandfather, one of his clients was a candy store, and so he would buy for me the popcorn balls. I remember those so distinctly because around Easter they were always in the shape of rabbits, and other candies from the store. And he would set up a table in front of the house, his house, and I would take the egg carton became my cash register. So the flat part was where I put the dollar bills, and where the eggs were, held in the little cradle, that was where I kept the coins. And so, I was out there and waving at the cars and stopping the kids in the neighborhood, most of which were my relatives because it was Aurora, Illinois, and that's another story about family. And so that's where the bug and the seed was additionally planted.
That's incredible. Oh my goodness. So, I do have just one. What brought you to Baltimore to open this gallery in Baltimore City? I mean, in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, Maryland has so much great talent, especially Baltimore City. Was it strategic in that sense? Like, it needs to be in Baltimore?
Yes, what happened is as Galerie Myrtis began to grow, I was first launched the gallery in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, and realized while I had the marketing and business background, I needed education in terms of becoming a curator. And so I enrolled in Micah's curatorial program, EDS, Exhibition Design Seminar, and surprised that George Sissel, who's my professor, tends to follow me around. He's not here today, but he was here at the other program. He has become my mentor and so instrumental in the development of as a curator and a business owner. And so it was the experience of being at Micah, realizing the tremendous talent that existed there. And I'm originally from Chicago, and I love the architecture in Baltimore because it reminds me so much of Chicago. So I told my husband, I would really like to live in Baltimore. And I also should add that the building that the gallery existed in DC was owned by a dear friend of ours, a patent attorney, 11,000 square foot Italian Renaissance building. It's 509th Street Southeast. And he invited me in, our friend Larry, to launch my gallery space. He'd been doing this for a long time as creative artisans. And he said, you need to launch your gallery now. I had begun to build a really strong stable of artists and a clientele base at that point. And so I did at his invitation, and he said, but this is my retirement, this building, so you got 2 years to figure something out. So it took nearly 2 years for us to find the incredible building where Galerie Myrtis now is. My husband actually found it for us, and it's just a perfect location.
Yeah, and For any of you that have not been to the gallery, it is a treat. And they have incredible exhibitions that are consistently rotating.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question within this category. What sparks, I don't want to say the most, but I guess that is a question. What sparks the most joy in your work as a curator?
Yes, I think it goes back to the reading, because curation requires a lot of research, and it forces me to slow down and settle in with scholarship, and read and research as I'm looking to put the work, the theme into context, depending on what the exhibition is. And so that's where the greatest joy comes from.
It's incredible. I mean, it's easy for a viewer to come in and see the glitz and the glam of the exhibition, but the hard work and the scholarship that's behind it to get it up is critical. Thank you. So, I'm so sorry. The next category is The Radical Voice of Blackness Speaks of Resistance and Joy, which is this exhibition. I love the title. What led you to come up with that particular title?
Mm-hmm. So the title is rooted in the celebration of the historic Marylanders, the radical efforts of Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, even Benjamin Banneker, who lived during a period where, and in some cases is still believed that, African Americans don't have the ability, the intellect to think, to create. And so that can be seen as a radical act as well, like knowledge, acquiring knowledge and education. And so it stems from that. The word radical means activism, sometimes extremism, uncompromising. So going up against those things that people and devices that people want to put into place to suppress you. So in curating this collection, one of the first radical things that I did was look to the museum's private holdings, permanent holdings, in order to put into context the contemporary expressions of radicalism, right? And so this narrative begins on the first floor exhibition space, looking at those historic individuals who gave of their lives for the rights, for our ability to even be here and to talk about them, looking at their legacies, because we are a part of that. We are all a part of that. We have all benefited from their sacrifices in order to bring justice where there is injustice. So that is definitely a part of what I wanted people to experience in coming here. And I also wanted it to be juxtaposed against our joy, because we don't just exist in the extreme efforts of having to fight against everything at all times, racism and discrimination. We also live with joy. And I wanted that to be expressed in this exhibition as well, so that people could see our humanity, how we exist when we're not protesting against white supremacists or just, again, the devices that exist to suppress us. And then in the center of this conversation is healing. And that is what Felicia G's video brings to us. If you have a time to listen to it later, It is 8 minutes and I believe 48 seconds. And that's the period of time where the police officer held his knee on George Floyd's neck and took his life away. And so she takes that 8 minutes and 48 seconds for us to be still and to breathe and to think and to contemplate about the beauty in life. So what she is chanting as you listen to the audio are prayers, devotions, in order, again, for us to sit in a moment of stillness. So curation, exhibition titles, I want them to be thought-provoking, somewhat provocative. I want it to be people's curiosities and imaginations to be engaged, and then to come and experience it, because if we have it here and no one experiences it, then it definitely defeats the purpose of what we're attempting to do.
When Shalisa brought the title to our staff, Shalisa Howard was our past curator. She's going to be the adjunct professor of archival management at George Washington University, but she worked closely with you on this project, and when she brought that title to our staff meeting, we were just all blown away, because even with that title and not having the curatorial statement, we got it, and it's poetic, and it really does resonate with just the Black experience, you know, as being and owning it, right? Owning our radical voice, you know. I just thought we all thought it was incredible, so thank you. Well, the exhibition features 17 artists that have either lived and or worked in Maryland. In your experience working with these artists, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a radical Black artist in Maryland, a state that has a tremendous history in Black civil rights, history and artistry, but you know, Maryland is still the South. You know, so what has been your experience working with Black artists, and I would say particularly Black artists who infuses the history of Black civil rights and resistance movements in their work?
Yes, well, it's been a tremendous experience, and one that has been life enriching. Again, going back to meaning, and the word radical means militant, revolutionary, activist, extremist, and uncompromising. And so I look to artists who bring truth to power, right? Truth to the imagery, and use that as a way to deploy their voice in addressing those concerns, and not always concerns in a negative way, but just speaking to our Black experiences. You know, it's just really rooted in our cultural aesthetic, and also, you know, and then its purpose is to educate. Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is educate, and we, you know, because we are not a monolith, our experiences are very different. And so this exhibition is also rooted in the African tradition of call and response, right? So the call is radical voice, but the response is a joyous one. And then in the center of that, again, we have our healing. So all of these things, and what I'm trying to bring in terms of the experience, is rooted in the artist's ability and storytelling. And Maryland has such a rich history, as you've said. I mean, this is the home of Banneker Douglass and and Harriet Tubman. And so there's such this strong and important history about activism and Maryland artists speaking to injustice and using their art as a weapon in order to put forth their ideas, their concerns, and the things that they treasure and want us to know about how they navigate the world.
Incredible. I mean, Maryland is where it's at. Oh, it's powerful. It's powerful. And I want to say real quick, just so, you know, this museum has had a super long history of exhibiting incredible artists. When I said earlier, you know, we haven't had a show to this caliber, what I mean is the survey of art, just the diversity of artists in such a large survey has been such a great new program for the museum. So thank you. So in this exhibition, most of the work, aside from a few, are figurative and all rooted in all, excuse me, am I loud enough? Yeah. Okay, I'm just on, all right. Okay. Most of the works are figurative and all rooted in Black history. And I'm gonna add just a quick anecdote to this question. So we did a lot of school tours at the museum, and the works that they gravitate most to are the figurative paintings. And particularly this one over here, Tawny Chapman, so the contemporary figurative works. And I'll ask them, like, well, what do you see? Why do you gravitate most to this painting? And a lot of it is, well, he looks like me, you know what I mean? Like, or he looks like my uncle, or, you know, like, I know this person, you know what I mean? Why do you think, as part of this mission, right, to educate others, why is this representation so important in museums?
I love hearing that we have young people here who are responding in a way that says, I see myself. Because growing up in Chicago, I lived near the museums, and I was a wanderer. I mean, I would not allow my kids to wander. Well, they lived in a safe space, but I would wander and walk to museums, and my mom would be freaking out. No cell phones back then. Where have you been? And I would just walk for miles, sometimes with a pack, you know, your little neighborhood kids. But I would always go to the museums and libraries and just like hang out. But I didn't really see myself in those spaces, well, in the museum spaces. But there was something visually compelling about what I was experiencing there. So what's important about what we have, the works, the figurative works in this exhibition, is that it's being presented devoid of the Eurocentric lens. We're presenting imagery where Black artists have taken full autonomy over the representation of the Black body and presented it in a way that speaks to the Black experience. And for me, that is what is so compelling about what is being experienced here.
Thank you. Jan, am I loud enough? Okay, no? Okay, sorry. But I'm loud enough for the live stream? Okay. So, if we were to, you know, I love this museum, but if we were to, like, expand the walls, expand the space, money wasn't enough. What works, what histories or Black experiences would you like to expand on in this exhibition?
I love that question.
Okay.
Because what I would have loved to explore more deeply would have been the legacy of Justice Thurgood Marshall. He's a Baltimorean, a civil rights attorney, and I just would have loved to be able to share with our community and the public at large his contributions to the civil rights movement.
Wonderful, wonderful. For those of you that don't know, we have there is a incredible Thurgood Marshall monument right in front of the State House. Raise your hand if you have seen that monument. Okay. Well, some of you have some homework. Okay, sorry. Because it is incredible. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask one more question in this category. Well, actually, you know what? Let's move on to the next category, which is the Venice Biennale. I have not gone, but I will go, because I feel like it's good to speak things into existence, which is why I asked the first question around expanding this exhibition. The Venice Biennale was founded in 1895 as the International Exhibition of Art of the city of Venice to promote the most noble activities of the modern spirit without distinction of country. The Biennale is arguably the most prestigious art exhibition in the world. In 2022, you became the first Black woman-owned gallery owner to participate in the Venice Biennale. Can we please? You exhibited artists such as Tawny Chapman, Larry Cook, his installation is upstairs, Monica Ikwebu, who are featured in the exhibition, so bringing Maryland, Black Maryland, to Venice. What was this experience like for you, and what was the reception like to these incredible artists and their work?
So, of course, the experience was amazing, overwhelming at times, and again, God sent. I just had always wished to participate, but didn't know how to make that happen. So sometimes you just need to be still and just manifest it in your life, and it will come. So it came by way of an email, because God is humorous. And so I first got really excited, and then I thought, oh my God, is this a scam? Because we get such crazy emails, like I was watched, but I won't go into it. So anyway, we become very skeptical. So once I investigated and realized that it was a legitimate invitation, which was extended by the European Cultural Center, Italy, I thought, all right, now I need to form a team, because knowing the Venice Biennale and its prestige, knowing that artists and museum curators and collectors from all over the world, it gets over 500,000 visitors per year. And understanding the impact that could have potentially on the artists' careers, on mine as a gallerist and a curator, I knew that the opportunity could not be taken lightly. So I am so fortunate to have mentors, Dr. Leslie King Hammond, Dr. Laurie Stokes-Sims, and then George Sissel, again, my former professor at MICA, and then a very good client and executive with the United Talent Agency, UTA, which is the UTA Artist Space in California, Arthur Lewis. So I formed an advisory committee. I went back to those corporate skills. I'm like, I need help. So each one of them agreed immediately to give of their time, their knowledge, and their experience to help me formulate, conceptualize, and bring the exhibition to fruition. So it took about 2 years of planning to make it happen. So it is now here in Baltimore. It has been divided between the two Lewis Museums, the Reginald F. Lewis Museum and the James E. Lewis Museum on the campus of Morgan State University, which is very meaningful for me to be able to bring this exhibition of these stellar artists to my home state and to my hometown, and then allow everyone to see the beauty of that expression, being the Afrofuturist Manifesto, Blackness Reimagined. So the exhibition itself, which I curated to bring an experience that would, on a global platform, one that speaks to the social, economic problems and racism that African Americans face. In the past, what we're dealing with in our presence, and then I asked the artists to envision what they want to see in our future. So Afrofuturism is rooted in the philosophy and theory of Black empowerment and liberation. So I curated it around 3 central themes: time, space, and existence. So, and I allow the artists to decide which 3 of those themes that they would like their work to respond to. So in time, 3 of the artists used it as a way to draw from African folklore. One drew from Greek mythology, and another looked to Sun Ra and Afrofuturism in terms of space is the place. Like, we need to leave this crazy world and get to another planet. So that is how they interpreted time. Space, for 3 of the artists, was looked at through the lens of our Black consciousness, physical space, and our spirituality. One artist drew from his imagination and asked us to conceive of mass incarceration without anyone incarcerated. He took photographs of prisoners that were taken in a prison yard and digitally removed them. And what remained was beautiful landscapes. So he asked us, and you may already know that 40% of the prison population is comprised of Black men. So what would a prison system be like where there were no one was incarcerated? That we offered instead mental health services, drug treatment. And so that's what we were challenged to think about. Delita Martin took us to a spiritual place, and she focuses on the existence of Black women. So she provided, through her work, the ideas that Black women exist between the physical and the spiritual world, right? And she calls it the veilscape, that we are these spiritual beings, and not with magical powers, but just with the existence, the way in which we exist, just beautiful expressions of Black women. And then existence, as the last category, were ideas conveyed through the work of Tony Chapman and Monica Ikewu. Both of their works are here. And they focused on our youth, what the future would look like for our youth. Monica asked us to think about Black youth in a way that we put our stereotypes aside, because she said a lot of her peers, her contemporaries, because of the way they're dressed, they're looked down upon. And really, it's just a way in which they choose to express themselves. And she asked us to look beyond the way in which they are dressed and really see through to who they are as human beings. And then Tawny, whose works are primarily focused around Black girls, young girls. She's a mother of 2 girls and has 3 children, but she has 2 daughters. And she asked us to look to our young women and the future of their lives and presents them in beautiful ways. And as acceptance of who they are as they exist. So that's our Venice exhibition, which you can now experience here.
Right here in Maryland. I would have paid money, volunteer time, just to be a fly on the wall in the conversations that you had with your advisory council. Because I'm sure that, these are heavy hitters in the art world. Lowry Sims.
I know, who curated Robert Colescott's. She was part of the team that curated Robert Colescott's exhibition in 1977. He's the first African American to ever have participated in the Venice Biennale, which has existed since 1895. And then Simone Lee, who represented the U.S. during last year's Biennale as the first African American woman.
Leslie King Hammond. For me, I can't speak for them, but just knowing, and actually you put it together, because when I saw Miss Hammond at a art event over the week, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know we're doing a discussion with Myrtis on Saturday, and she said, well, you know I was on the board to the Venice Biennale, and I was like, and I didn't really know, and I was so now, but she was beaming, like she was really excited, and I'm sure that these women, your mentors, were so excited just to lift you up.
Oh my God, yes.
And the fact that you made that, yes, it was a business-minded decision, like to have that advisory board, but to reach out to your mentors and to say, help, like let's build this, help me build this together. It's just incredibly meaningful and should be a documentary. It's incredible.
And the idea came through, the idea to focus on Afrofuturism was suggested by Leslie, Doc King as I call her. And I have to say to you, and I was meaning to share this with you before, it was because they were so generous of their time. And that is the reason I accepted the invitation, your invitation to curate here, because I really felt that this was an opportunity for me to pay it forward.
I'm gonna do the same. Thank you. Black women in leadership. That is just such a gift. All right, so the next topic is the black art market. So from your experience raise your hand if you collect art, right? Raise your hand if you collect black art. Around, that's right. Okay.
Well, and raise your hand if you have art on your walls by any artist.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we all collect art.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is a treat for all of you because you have a renowned gallerist that can share some wisdom on building your own art collection. So from your experience as a curator, how would you describe the state of today's black art market?
Well, I've been around 30 plus years, and I've seen where there was times where I was struggling to sell a $250 work of art because the interest just wasn't fully there, I will say. If it hadn't been for the clients and the artists who supported me 30 plus years ago, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you today. But I've seen black art become far more desirable. And I think there's many factors that have made that so. In most recent years, I know that the opening of the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture has been key and instrumental in the rising interest in African American art. I also believe that the auction houses deal in primary and secondary market work. So secondary market work is work that is being sold for the second time, maybe out of someone's private collection or when museums deassess. And so that's another part of the advisory services that I offer. And so because of that, I have to do research, evaluation in terms of, someone brings me a work of art and says, well, what should I sell this for? So that keeps me going back to grandpa and, digging down in those numbers and going through the process of the evaluation process. So, I have definitely seen a rise in interest in artwork. Black art has just become more collectible. It's so interesting. I actually once represented Amy Sherrill, and she had dinner at my place last night. She just happens to be in town, and Kathy Bird is a good friend, and so we were this posse that used to run out years ago. But so I was sharing with Amy last night. I said I have a slide of your Michelle Obama painting in my presentation today. So something else that has increased in interest is museums collecting Black art. And I think there has been sort of a social reckoning in institutions, and that they're trying to correct the historic wrong of their de facto system of racism and discrimination, and failing to fund exhibitions for Black artist works to be hung on their walls. Certainly they have failed to acquire works to make them a part of their collections. And so there are many who are now putting forth efforts to create equity, diversity, and inclusion. And then there are others who are just basically giving lip service to it and not making a commitment at all. So, these numbers here, this was a 2019 report that shows that while they're moving in that direction, still the work of African American artists is only like 1.2% in major institutions.
That's crazy. So do you find that within these major institutions, there's like a trend to do Black-themed exhibitions, but when you look in their collections, you really just don't see that representation? Is that kind of like an unfortunate pattern?
Yes, it is. But I'm always the optimist and remain hopeful. I do see where that is being dealt with in a very earnest way. And so, I think the other thing is about economics, right? And so something else that has impacted those decisions is seeing those lines outside of the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. While a lot of museums are really struggling for audience and to bring people through their doors, there also is an effort to recognize the expressions of Black art, the Black experience as now America's experience, and bring those images and artworks into the conversation and integrate that into the exhibitions that may not necessarily be solely about African American or Black experience, but you'll see a Rothko next to a Sam Gilliam because they're both abstract artists.
That's awesome. What advice would you, I would say this, even as an artist, like starting my Black art collection journey, I was a little intimidated. I mean, for me, it was just like, okay, whatever I can afford, and I would just like trade art with my friends, or, but a lot of people are really intimidated when they start collecting. I mean, even you ask the question, well, who here hangs up art in their house? You know, like, it's not. So how would you advise someone starting their art collection journey? And specifically, if you can talk about their Black art collection journey.
So I've offered a few reasons here that many of my collectors, whether they're African American or not, because if I'm finding that clients who are not African American but want to acquire the works of Black artists, in most cases are doing so because they want a collection that reflects the world in which we live, and they want their children to grow up with a level of sensitivity towards the plight of others. And so here's some of the reasons why African Americans tend to collect. For self-identity, cultural pride and enrichment. They see it as a way of their participating in the cultural and historical preservation of who we are, because it's intellectually stimulating, and that stems from reading books about art and artists and perhaps even what inspires them, to contribute to the art ecosystem and supporting artists and galleries such as mine. And then for wealth building. I mean, going back again to dealing in the secondary market, and I can say it now because it's, the auction is taking place. I handle estates, and only the art collections within those estates, and consigned a painting by Alma Thomas to an auction house in New York. I work with several auction houses in New York, and the painting sold for over $500,000. So those funds go primarily to the family. So this is a way of passing down wealth, building wealth by buying. I mean, let me tell you, my clients who bought an Amy Sherrill, when I was first representing her, love some Myrtis. And today, because her work sells, for millions of dollars at auction, I don't know what it's selling for through the gallery. But so, considering that, art can also be part of, your wealth building, it's a appreciable asset, and those two are some of the reasons why collectors buy.
I think the wealth building piece for me is, plus of course I love Black art, is something that I think a lot of people don't consider. They think for example, I do have an Amy Sherrill story.
Good.
So when I was working at I was a director of education at the Creative Alliance, and they had a group exhibition, and Amy Sherrill was an artist in residence at the time, and she had a drawing that I just loved. It was only like $800, but I was making like $50,000 a year. I couldn't afford it. And so when I was telling my friend about it a little while ago after the Michelle Obama painting was unveiled, she was like, girl, I would have sent you a few $100s. So I kicked myself. But yes, I think, it is definitely an opportunity to one, beautify your home, of course, but to build wealth.
And I want to just add one comment to that. So, and I'm glad there's something else I wanted to say too. But firstly is that what we do at my gallery, and most galleries would do this, is offer a payment plan. And I'm telling you, my wealthiest clients who pay for their artwork with those we love Charles Schwab, because they just buy with their dividend checks, right? So they're like, okay, Myrtis, I'll give you like X amount of dollars now, and then when I get that next dividend check, we'll pay this off, So even my wealthiest clients who could buy without even a thought, they do a payment plan. So I say this to you as a way to don't be intimidated, ask the gallery, put down the $50 and then pay it off if there's an artist whose works really speak to you and you're supporting that artist and that gallery in ways that will help to sustain them and they can build those artists' careers. And something else you said about exchanging the work of other artists, That is really important to know for artists who might be in the room. Some of the collections that I've handled of artists who have left us is that they traded works with their contemporaries. And so those collections tend to be really rich, and museums love when I call them, because the curators in various museums, we sell works to museums as well, because, you know, for African American artists especially, who were not written about, there's still some scholarship, but not a lot of scholarship. So artists tend to be in artist groups. I've discovered like notes from their meetings and such. And so for museum curators, they love that because it's it helps to reveal the history of that artist's career and the other artists who they were working with, whose works they may have been both inspired by. So it really reveals a lot about their careers, their careers.
Gem dropping at the Banneker Douglass Museum. Thank you. A lot to consider. Just I'm gonna take a minute to unpack that, but thank you for that. What advice would you? Let me just say this. I know an artist who, when they got the news that you were representing them, they were so over the moon. Like it is, and even with Megan Lewis's, when you began, I follow her on Instagram, and when she signed that contract, or when she became one of the artists that you represent, she was just over the moon, excited, happy, because it really does elevate the careers of so many artists. It's just such a great opportunity to be represented by such a established gallery, but also Black woman-led gallery. It's incredible. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for many artists. So what advice would you give an artist who's looking to be represented by you?
So first, we're not taking on anyone, because sometimes when I'm asked this question, I get bombarded with, well, I'm here. So we're not taking on anyone right now. But what I look for and what I found in Megan's work and Tawny and the other artists that I have the privilege of representing is a unique voice. And I'm looking for an artist's ability to tell a story. I'm looking for refinement in the execution of their art making. I want to see artists demonstrate their ability to tell a story around a central theme or through various materials, but they have to demonstrate that through 15 or 20 works. I have encountered artists who, one, are hobbyists. Oh, I created this piece like 10 years ago, and I think it's a masterpiece, and can you represent me? I'm like, no, because you're a hobbyist. You only create when, you have to demonstrate that this is a profession, right? And not something that you do on occasion. Because what I do is my profession, and I'm devoted to it and committed to it every day. So not to imply that you have to create a work every day or even, be about the effort every day, but it has to be your commitment. It can't be like a sometimey thing, because I'm not a sometimey kind of person. So that's part of the criteria. The artists that I work with, we are in partnership with one another. And it's crazy to me. I was interviewing a gentleman not too long ago, actually, who was referred to me by Amy. And just as a way of respecting the introduction that she made and giving some consideration to possibly bringing someone on. And he said a couple of things that were of concern to me. One, I said, well, what are your goals? And that's a really important question. that I pose every artist before bringing them on. Because if they're not realistic, I know I can't sign you on. If you don't have any, I surely can't sign you on. Because I can't help you achieve what it is that will help build and sustain your career if you don't have any idea of what that is. So he just said, I want to be famous. And I was like, okay. The answer is no. And I didn't tell him no then, but I wrote a polite decline. Because fame is fleeting. You can be famous and you can be infamous. So, what if you don't become famous? Then what does that mean between the two of us and my relationship and my role as the gallerist? So I've heard that before, and as you might guess, none of those artists are on my roster. If he or any artist says, I'm compelled to create, I have sleepless nights because I need an outlet for what it is that, I have this impulse, I have ideas, I want to put my imagination and lay that down on this canvas or through this photograph, or conceptually I need to work through stuff, then I'm there. That I can support, that I can get on board with, because I understand that as a writer, I have sleepless nights because the voices inside me say I need to lay things down and write them out, and that's how I contemplate and formulate my world. So those are some of the criteria for selecting artists that we represent.
I really hope that I'm sure there's artists in the room today, but I hope that there are artists that are watching this online, because that is such a powerful gem. Fame is fleeting. So I was going to ask this question, but I intentionally made it my last question, which is, what is an adventure that, and it could be real or imagined, because it is good to speak things into existence, but what adventure are you most excited about? Like the next steps for you?
Yes, so the next steps for me are, I'm considering opening a second location. Where?
Annapolis?
No, probably outside of the state of Maryland. I'm also looking to exhibit abroad, again, internationally. I've had 3, like Sweden, I want to do Basel, Switzerland rather, Paris and London. So I'm in sanctuary, so God, come on with another email. So, I don't know how soon or how far in the future those opportunities will come, but I'm open and receptive to that. So those are some of the personal goals. I have goals that I've set for the artist and work to help those come to fruition. And then I have my own personal goals too that I want. And then my husband's promised to get horses that I want to. I love horses, and I want to have a place where we have horses. I'm just throwing it out there, putting it out in public so you feel more obligated.
You better carry some horses. That is awesome. Myrtis, are you a nonfiction writer? Like, are you just a writer of?
I have some things that I'm writing that are nonfiction. It's about my life, probably, and put it in a fictionalized way. So as a writer, the horses and the retreat is where I want to do my writing, and some other personal goals are to find a place where I can create a residency for artists. What I'm really looking to do, and this is a recurring dream, things come to me in dreams, is to buy a slave cabin, some place on a historic site. This is why I'm so drawn to Harriet Tubman. And I would like to create a retreat there. So I Google at times like old churches, looking for an old abandoned church somewhere, and maybe converting that. So again, manifesting it in dreams and writing and visions, and so hopefully, we'll all have a big party at the opening. I'll ride the horse around.
I'm incredibly moved by your how you describe your purpose. Like, you have this talent and you have these goals for yourself, but you are looking to uplift and inspire others to create work. I just think that's incredible. You went from, oh, we're gonna buy some horses, to, we're gonna do a residency, and we're like, that's incredible. And I really hope it's in Maryland. I'm sure you can. Okay, all right.
Definitely.
Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. She's looking for a heritage site. Thank you. Can we please give Ms. Myrtis So we're going to open it up for a Q&A. And Mrs. Son, you want me to?
Yes, so I'll be passing the mic.
Thank you both again. You were excellent. Okay. Can we give both Executive Director Johnson and I just have a really quick story before we begin the question and answer. I don't know, I'm sure Myrtis doesn't remember this, but a couple of years ago, Director, I may say Compton interchangeably, she's newly Johnson, but Director Compton gifted the staff with a day trip to Miami for Art Basel. It was actually a professional development trip, and Art Basel, of course, is a huge show in Miami. And Myrtis was exhibiting there, but being that we were there for one day, I think we got there at 8 that morning, and we got on like, we were crazy. Yeah, we were absolutely crazy. And we're grabbing things along the way, buying pieces of art. And our last location was where Myrtis was exhibiting. We were totally tired, and upon leaving, we were stopped by security at the door and accused of stealing art. And mind you, in that space, it wasn't an African American space. We were probably like a few of the African Americans there. So of course, I was totally shocked, as was Director Johnson, who after maybe for about 30 seconds of going back and forth said, "I'm telling." I was like, "Oh, what are you going to tell?" She said, "I'm going to get Myrtis." I was like, "Okay." And as you see, Myrtis, who is this soft-spoken, but look, her husband's like, "Oh boy." And I tell you, as angry as I was at those security guards for stopping us, was nothing compared to what Myrtis unleashed on them. I was like, uh-oh. But I mean, the manner in which she validated my existence in that moment and just made us feel safe, I will never ever forget that moment. So, but she is the real deal, extremely serious, and I wanted to personally thank you for that. So, yeah, we will now open the floor up to any questions.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Wally Gill, and I have two questions. One is about the three exhibitions, and the other is a little personal. How many women are represented in the three exhibitions? And the personal question is, what was attractive about Maryland that brought you here?
So in the Afrofuturist Manifesto exhibition, there are three women artists. Toni Chapman, Monica Ikegwu, and Delita Martin. What attracted me to Maryland is we're living in Silver Spring, again, prior to moving to Baltimore, and I fell in love with Baltimore because of the architecture that reminded me so much of Chicago. So that's how I came to be in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna keep it here.
I have a question for my wife.
Oh, I love it.
Arabian.
We will get the horses at some point. But there's two things. One's a comment, and Myrtis talked earlier about Thurgood Marshall. And do you remember, sweetie, when we were in New York? I forgot where we were, but we were sitting at his desk.
Oh yes, it was the Urban League.
They actually had his desk there, and we went into this room. It's a storage, and the lady just says casually, that's Thurgood Marshall's desk. And we're looking at it, and you see all the little writings and carvings that he did in the desk and stuff, but that was very...
It's
I
now
still remember
owned by
that.
the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture, and I remember putting my head down on that desk and weeping. I could not believe
That was so special.
that I was sitting there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, we have conversations a lot, but they're very intimate, so we can close them. But we had a conversation that didn't quite get closed a couple of weeks ago, and I knew Myrtis was thinking about it, and maybe she could share with the rest of you and me your thoughts on lingering.
Oh yes, we were talking about lingering, and in the sense that we wanted people. Well, Alex actually was sharing with me some information that he had newly discovered. I can't remember. We watch a lot of documentaries and listen to podcasts all the time, and I can't remember the source, but the conversation in that experience for him was this theory of lingering and how people are to experience things. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly how I want people to experience each exhibition that I represent. And that is to take time to linger before the piece, to rest with it, and either see yourself in it, like those children who have come here and say, I love that piece because that's me, or to contemplate the plight of others, and that being radically or joyously.
Hi, I'm Kathy Bird, friend of these two, and a podcaster and curator as well. Last night you were talking about something you had in mind to create as a formative structure for emerging art professionals. Would you talk about that?
Your friends that put you on the spot. Everything's being revealed today. Horses, residency. Yes. So thank you, Kathy, for posing that question. So, talking about vision and personal goals last night over a really dynamic conversation we had over dinner with my husband and Amy and Jeffrey Kent, another really well-known artist here in Maryland. So yes, I have an idea to create cultural curators as part of maybe my nonprofit or from the foundation efforts, because this profession, one, lacks a lot of African Americans presence. There's still very few African American and people of color who see this as their path. And also it's very costly. Like we were talking about, my time at MICA, and that it's very cost prohibitive for many. And also I should say cultural curators would actually be open to everyone. So it would be rooted in the foundation of looking at different cultures and researching it from my love of reading, and then presenting an exhibition based on a particular theme, and providing these opportunities to high school students, I would say the senior year, and then to college students, maybe undergraduates. I have an internship at the gallery. It is a paid internship, which I've provided for many years. And I'm not boasting, but I do take pride in knowing that many of the interns who have matriculated through my program have gone on to really stellar careers. A lot of them went on to become employees, and then, who took that experience. One is now over the grants at the Andy Warhol Foundation. Others have gone on to positions at museums, and very proudly say that Galerie Myrtis was part of the education and the experience that they gave. I put them to work. So, and of course I have benefited from, their youthful energy and social media abilities. The person that serves as my gallery assistant now, she will be completing her MFA at MICA and will become my gallery manager in just a few weeks and be coming aboard full-time, which I cannot wait. She's so brilliant and talented, Kai Vassar. So, yes, I hope to create cultural curators as a practice for those who are considering getting into the profession. And it will not just be for young people, because when I entered MICA, I was the oldest person in the class, and so it will be, no age discrimination there. Because sometimes you get to a point, just like for me, I've down a different path, chose a different professional path. So it will be something that, again, horses, land, building. So we're just putting it out in the universe.
Do you have any other questions for Myrtis? Sure.
My name is Bob Madden. Just to go on from your relationship with MICA. Yes. MICA is in trouble now. They don't have very much money. They're having a decline of applicants even to get into the school. Do you have any suggestions of how we could help? It's a Maryland institution and a big one, so yes, we'd like to see that grow.
I don't think I'm in a position to really make any suggestions. I don't know the dynamics, and so I'm going to take a pause on that one, because I don't want to put anything out that would be considered like a criticism of them. My experience at MICA was very rich. It was challenging because I was a student and operating the gallery and driving back and forth from Washington, D.C. It just really was very important in shaping the curator that I have become. And again, George Sisso has been an absolute blessing to me and so very supportive. So if I were called to the table, I might go to my Chicago self and say, yeah, you need to correct some things up in here, but that's not the table I'm sitting at today. I'm sitting here.
Do you have any other questions?
Well, then, thank you very much, Director Johnson. Thank you all for coming, of course. And we do have some light refreshments out in the hallway on the landing. Please stay, enjoy the exhibit, and we hope to see you at our next program. Thank you.